This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. Since 2023, while the UK Parliament was busy and quietly pushing through the online safety bill, I was out here warning anyone who would listen. And now, I'm telling you, I was right. Again. This wasn't just another bill. This was the blueprint for a surveillance state cloaked in compassion. Back in October 2023, King Charles III signed this bill into law. This was his first major bill as monarch. That alone should have raised eyebrows, but most people didn't blink. They just clapped for child safety and literally moved on. And let's address this. The king couldn't refuse to not sign this royal assent. I mean, we all know that it's pretty much a ceremonial task to do. It's automatic. And, we can see it as performative. It's what the monarch does to nod politely at the will of Parliament. The ironic thing, though, is that there's symbolism in this. We have Prince Harry, the king's son in America, who has been doing his best to tear down the First Amendment from the inside, while the EU and UK are putting pressure externally for the First Amendment to collapse. Interesting that his first signature as king wasn't on a unity bill or something celebrating liberty. It was on a speech control bill wrapped in child-safe packaging. But let's understand how we got here. Let's rewind back to December 2022, when the Twitter files exploded into public view. Elon Musk threw open the blinds and showed us what we suspected. Government agencies were flagging tweets, platforms were obeying, and critics were being de-amplified, shadow banned, and deleted. In parallel, we saw Sunshine Sachs running away and the Sussex Squad suddenly starting to reduce in size significantly. We also saw the first announcement of King Charles kicking Harry and Meghan out of Frogmore and Prince Harry no longer having UK as his residence. Do I think there's a link between this move and the Twitter files? Yeah, I do. I believe, and I've said this before, that Megxit was a complete lie, and Harry has been here on a mission, as he has so openly stated several times. A mission that the king was very aware of, in Harry's words, reshaping the media landscape. When we go back and look at the Twitter files, these weren't conspiracy theories anymore. These were screenshots, email chains, Slack messages, receipts of collusion between big tech and big government. And while some of us were connecting dots and speaking out, the average person was too distracted. Oh, it's just Twitter. It's a private company. You agree to the terms. Except it wasn't just Twitter. And you didn't really agree to anything. We were all manipulated. You were pushed into corners of the internet where questioning power became abuse and disagreement became harm. Christopher Boozy and Sarah Data caused significant harm by deliberately targeting innocent people who expressed opinions that clashed with the Sussex team's narratives. Their strategy was to attack anyone questioning Meghan Markle's divisive lies and disinformation, aiming to damage the royal family. Then, as the Twitter files made it harder for elites to argue with a straight face that tech platforms weren't being abused, as revealed in numerous U.S. congressional hearings and the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit, the strategy had to change. Enter in the child safety narrative. They all took great pleasure in violating a person's privacy rights and freedoms if they dare deviate from the narratives they forced onto the public, because it meant if they could do that, they had control. And that control was able to change people's behaviors, which is ultimately what they were attempting to do. The common themes that we saw amongst these researchers and those who felt that they were the ones to tell us what we should believe and not, felt that encryption was too dangerous, anonymity was harmful, and of course, age verification, a moral necessity. It's the same strategy used by the people who push the online safety bill, by NGOs with million and billion-dollar donors that included Harry and Meghan. When Harry wasn't busy airing family drama on Netflix, he was testifying in court about the trauma of tabloids. And while Meghan wasn't suing the Daily Mail, she was co-signing campaigns for online accountability, which, surprise, always translates to censorship with a polite face. They rebranded criticism as cruelty, disagreement as hate speech, and scrutiny as bullying. Their real goal? It's not safety. I said it earlier. It's about control, PR dominance, narrative discipline. And when platforms didn't comply, like when Twitter was bought over by Elon Musk and became X, they all panicked and started to push these legislations forward. We saw the acceleration of the online safety bill, the DSA in Europe. We saw Australia fast track their censorship bill, as well as Canada. And now we're starting to see this work take effect. Reddit, once the last bastion of anonymous expression, has officially fallen in line. Age verification is coming, not the old click here if you're 18. I'm talking real verification. Facial recognition, ID uploads, biometrics, third-party contractors who get your data in the name of so-called protection. Reddit users in the UK are now being required to follow the UK's new digital ID laws and verify their age before accessing content deemed so-called unsafe for minors, following the new state-imposed demands under the UK's new censorship law, the Online Safety Act. This latest step in the government's push to regulate digital spaces compels websites to install digital ID checks in the name of child protection, at the potential expense of user privacy and the risk of stifling free speech by removing anonymity. Ofcom has made it clear that sites hosting certain material must implement what it calls robust age gates or face heavy financial penalties. We expect other companies to follow suit or face enforcement if they fail to act, said the regulator. While Reddit claims it will not retain images or full ID documents, it will log a user's verification status and date of birth to allow easier access in the future. Persona, according to Reddit, promises not to retain the picture for longer than 7 days and will supposedly not touch any browsing data on the site. Despite these assurances, the fact remains the state now requires people to hand over personal identification simply to access legal online discussions. Now, we've seen this play out as a result of having first-hand experience of what can happen if the bad people get a hold of your data. Anyway, the full enforcement of the Online Safety Act begins on July 25th, and Ofcom is already signaling that noncompliance could result in fines up to $24 million or 10% of global revenue, whichever is greater. Even more alarming is the regulator has been granted the power to disrupt business operations entirely, potentially forcing ISPs to block sites or pressuring advertisers and payment providers to cut ties with platforms deemed non-compliant. The move is not Reddit's idea, but rather a forced adaptation of looming enforcement threats from Ofcom, the UK's media regulator. At this point, I think we've been lied to so much. Do we really believe that it's just verifying your age? They'll be logging your IP. They'll be correlating usernames to real-world identities. They'll be keeping receipts on you. Why? Because under the Online Safety Act, they'll have no choice. Ofcom, the UK's new digital enforcer, has sweeping powers. They can force platforms to scan private messages, to de-anonymize users, and to report what you say, even in encrypted apps. That's not regulation, guys. That's literally a hostage situation. To some, this news may seem still very foreign, but let's bring this down to earth and consider the Saint Meghan Markle subreddit. Many of you know it's a community of Redditors, aka sinners, who challenge the carefully crafted image of Harry and Meghan. They share receipts, they call out the hypocrisy, and they use words like grifters or scammers to describe the dastardly duo. Some people may not like it. We know that Meghan definitely doesn't like it. But the bottom line is you don't have to agree with what's being said. But here's the point. It's called criticism. It's legal. At least in the United States, it's protected speech. And in a functioning democracy, that matters. But under this new model, if the Sussex team and Meghan or Harry wanted to shut it down, they don't need an argument. They need a flag. They need to say it's harassment, toxic, inciting hate. Once flagged, the mods could be pressured. The users could be unmasked, and with Reddit now rolling out ID-based verification, those usernames can be mapped quickly to real names, employers, addresses. We know, or at least I've shared evidence showing, Harry and Meghan had access to people who worked at Twitter and Facebook and were able to get people's personal identification to dox and threaten them. I mean, even though they're saying that this information is going to be wiped after 7 days, does anybody really trust that or believe that? The internet is forever, and even though they may say that it's erased, it's going to exist somewhere on some server, backed up somewhere somehow, or be able to be retrieved or recovered, especially if the government wants to have access to it later down the road. Now, granted, this may apply just for the UK for now, but I can totally see Reddit saying, hey, we want to reduce our liability here and put this out for all our users, which would include people in the United States and Canada and everywhere else. I mean, this should literally frighten everyone because it's not just Reddit this is going to apply to. This is going to apply to YouTube. It's going to apply to Facebook and any other social media platform or online platform that touches the UK. The concerning thing, though, is that should this gain momentum, we're seeing that the DSA in the EU is going to start to implement similar rules and regulations. We're going to see again what was happening to people on Twitter and Facebook, as well as many on YouTube. Back in 2020 to the end of 2022, let's not forget the coordinated bot reports, the mass flagging, critics labeled as trolls and were exiled from any and all social media platforms, taking away people's rights and ruining actual lives. Only now, it won't stop at platform bans. It will come with real-world consequences and exacerbate harm to people. We already saw a preview of this when they pretty much went to push Russell Brand off of every online platform, taking away his ability to earn an income. I mean, they're already starting to jail people over Facebook posts. Look at Lucy Connolly. I foresee this only getting worse. So let me be blunt. The bill isn't about kids. This is about you. It's about making sure you know that what you say can be tracked, stored, and weaponized. That if you push the wrong button, criticize the wrong person, or share the wrong meme, your entire digital footprint can be pulled like a thread. Now, this is my opinion, but I am a free speech absolutist. What begins with trolls and extremists always ends with dissidents and skeptics. Free speech cannot exist without anonymity, not in a world where the powerful can sue, blacklist, cancel, or punish. And we know this because we've experienced firsthand Meghan Markle. Anonymity protects the whistleblower, the researcher, the abused, the exiled, the critic. It protects satire, it protects honesty, and it protects truth when truth is unpopular. So, like, what happens when you force every critic to hand over their ID to speak? You're not protecting children. You're actually silencing adults. And this isn't just a UK thing. This is actually spreading. The EU is trying similar moves with the Digital Services Act. Australia has its own Online Safety Act. The U.S. has been floating its COSA bill, or the Kids Online Safety Act. That sounds noble on paper, but hidden in it is the same authoritarian DNA. Everywhere, the same groups reappear, well-funded nonprofits, think tanks, and the same tech billionaires who already control these platforms. They cry about online abuse while simultaneously funding AI tools that scan your posts and score your risk profile. Yes, they do that. For those that don't know, X has been doing that. Even AI generated content isn't safe. The same groups now want mandatory watermarking. They want identity-based use licenses. They want surveillance baked into every tool from the moment you log in. And yes, I don't disagree. There needs to be some type of regulation, but to protect the end user, not so much to protect these platforms or to structure algorithms that drive influencing somebody's behavior or decision. And we see that happening today where the algorithm chooses what information is being pushed out for the end user to see, not actually giving the end user the choice on available information that's out there. Now, I get that the algorithm is choosing and curating information based off of your history, but at the same time, we know that there are certain agendas that have been pushed, especially from the left. Now, the concern that I have with these child safety laws is them prioritizing the data that gets pushed out to your children, as well as by default being pushed out to you. So here we are falling back into the same trap. Now, I said this would happen once I saw Harry and Meghan launch that Fugazi Parents Network. I told everybody that the Twitter files weren't going to be the end-all be-all and that all of a sudden they learned their lesson and they were going to stop. It literally was a warning of what they're trying to do. They were the blueprints of how these platforms should be regulated by the people who think they know better than us. I said that when Harry and Meghan started crying about online harm in 2021, the real aim was censorship. That misinformation was just code for narratives they don't like. And that child safety now is going to become the golden hammer to smash civil liberties. And here we are. If you've been with me on this journey, how many of you saw people rolling their eyes, thinking that I was being dramatic, and thought that Harry and Meghan did not have that kind of influence? Now, don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. Harry and Meghan are not solely responsible for pulling this off. They're a part of this massive network. But now, in the UK, you're being told to upload your ID to read subreddits. Again, let me repeat. In the UK, the citizens are now being required to upload their personal ID, whether it be license or passports, to read subreddits. How do you feel about that? Encrypted apps also are being forced to install scanning tools. Now your posts can get you doxxed, fired, and dragged into court because someone in power found them harmful. And when we're talking about encrypted apps, we're looking at apps like WhatsApp. So if you have like a group where one person is from the UK, guess what? Everybody else in that group is getting compromised. Now, the thing that really bothers me here about the UK government's overreach and invading the privacy of its own citizens is that we know this is not about cracking down on child harm. They're not going to do jack shit about protecting children. We see how many pedophiles are running around as well as the raping of those children. They're not going to do jack shit about that. They care more about what you're saying and if it's in line with what the government is pushing onto its people. So if you don't support climate change and you have a problem with drinking out of paper straws, who knows? You could be put on a list and not be able to fly somewhere. I'm just telling you the possibilities of what is to come with giving this type of power to the government. We see this playing out, or we saw this playing out with Brazil. You know, this is not about security. This is called compliance culture. And the cost is liberty. And, you know, as an American, I thank God every day that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is a God-given right. And America respects what God has bestowed to his children. These people running the world are just fucking satanic. The endgame of these authoritarians is simple. Speech will become a licensed activity, something you can do if you follow the rules, if you speak in the right tone, and if your credentials check out. But real speech, and I mean dangerous speech, disruptive speech, satirical, critical, anti-establishment speech, will be buried. Not by law directly, but by friction, by regulation, and by fear. Let me leave you with this question. What happens when the only free speech allowed is the kind that nobody in power finds inconvenient? What type of society will we have by then? And folks, don't think that we'll never get there. We're nearly there. The infrastructure is almost in place. The bills are passing. The platforms are rolling it out. And the masses are still very much fast asleep. But what do you guys think? Do you think free speech is lost and gone in the UK? Do you think people will ever get it back? Definitely leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!
Such a fraud.